Dit is Ergens Over Radio.
Een andere kijk op de wereld.
You're listening to Pateo Radio.
Welcome listeners to another episode of Pateo Radio. The guest of the night has been my guest earlier on November 5th of last year, 2012. And his name is Marty Leeds, and he's very deep into numbers and the meaning of numbers, and especially the transcendental number of pi, which is one of his most famous subjects, I think. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, it's really great. I was just watching your latest video on your YouTube channel on Matthew, where you explain that Matthew is in fact also Matthew. So I really like that kind of right brain explanations. I think people with only a left brain, they think that it's totally outrageous to draw these kinds of conclusions. But yes, I somehow like it. What is your response from the audience to these kinds of not left brain relations you pulled out?
I try to merge both sides of the brain. I mean, I think, in a lot of spiritualities, balance is very important. And so, I actually see a lot of spiritualities right now say, well, it's all about the right side of the brain. Go to the right side because that is, where the sun rises in the east, that sort of idea. But, to me, it's all about balance. So I think, I think merging the two, you actually get a better understanding of what's going on in reality, because that's what, nature gave us, both sides of those brains. And so I like to say, the left side of the brain is the mathematical side. That's the very listing, very, analytical, that sort of thing. And then the right side is the numerological. And, I think they're both legitimate. And so, breaking down this stuff and then actually showing the math along with it, actually, I think it makes a good case for, how these ancient people actually constructed, names and words and things like the Holy Bible and et cetera. So.
Exactly. But my question was, if you only have a left side brain developed, then it's very difficult to deal with these right-sided relations you pull out. Because, for instance, when you, see the number 59 or 17 or 33, then they immediately have meaning to you. But for people who only have the left brain developed, they just see a number of ciphers, and there is not much meaning. So how do you help those people to see the bigger picture, to see also the right side, so to say?
Just trying to, really just trying to explain this stuff, as well as I can. And in my opinion, kind of proving that, these ancient people use both sides of the brain, and the people that are only using that left side, and I mean, basically this is modern science right now. Modern science is completely left out all spirituality, all creativity, anything on the right side of the brain, basically, that our ancient ancestors or that science itself could be creative, and I just completely disagree. And I think that and I think you're showing this. I think there's lots of people that are going into this right now. A lot of researchers that, I think invariably proving that, our world, the word creator and creativity all stem from the same Latin root, and so, I like to make the point that I believe, I feel like I've had this experience with this creator that's being creative with creation. And so I think that if we don't use both sides of our brain, if we don't look to that creative side, I think we're missing out on a whole bunch. And I think that's exactly what the holy science is about. It's about being whole, which means do not exclude that right side. Do not exclude that creative side, because if you do, I think you're going to miss out on a lot, if you know what I'm saying.
I couldn't agree with you more, Marty. So thank you very much for saying this. Yeah, for the listeners who didn't have the opportunity to listen to your previous show, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit to the audience about your background and what you do in daily life, things like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Right now I've got 3 books. Pi the Great Work, Pi in the English Alphabet Volume 1 and Volume 2 just came out on Pi Day, actually, last month. So, those 3 books, the Pi in the English Alphabet series, I'm working on the 3rd volume right now, is an exclusive look at this mathematical cipher behind the English alphabet. And then my first book, Pi the Great Work, is very highly illustrated, very philosophical look at numerology and just mathematics in general, number theory, numbers as symbols, that sort of thing, and just kind of getting a new, just revisiting this subject with a new set of eyes, really. So that's kind of what my books are about. And then I'm a teacher at the School of the Holy Science, just like you. We got Bill Donahue and Sano Spinacci and Jason Grubelli, and it's starting to grow, which is really great. And then I'm also going to be doing a radio show as well. Right now it's going to be bi-weekly, but I'm hoping to get it every week. Let's see how well I do with it. And that's going to be on astrotheologyradio.com, and that's called Marty Leeds' Mathemagical Radio Hour. And so I'm going to have a bunch of guests. I know you're going to be on the show, so look forward to that. So that's me kind of in a nutshell, I guess. So.
Okay, thank you very much, and also thank you for giving me the opportunity to be your guest one day. I think people who are familiar with numerology, they know the Pythagorean way of numerology. That is, the A is 1 up to the I is 9, and then the J is 1 again. But you use a different system in which you divide the alphabet into 2 series of 13 letters, the A until the M, and then the N up to the Z, and they go up to 7 and then go back to 1 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 6, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1. What can you tell a little bit about the origin of this system? Because I think most people are not familiar with the one you use.
Well, kind of deconstructing this and basically I use the motif. The reason I'm using 7 is the motif that we see in the Bible. And I mean, the first time I constructed this, that's exactly where I got it, walking up the 6 days of creation and then resting on that 7. And then it also made a lot of sense that because there are 7 notes of the major scale and we see this consistent number 7 in relationship to the human being all over, even the number of visible heavenly spheres we can see in the sky is 7. 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 chakras, 7 days of the week. And so I focused on this 7 because of the Bible. But when I started deconstructing it, I was basically using these strong philosophical constants that you would see in nature itself. And those being economy, simplicity, duality, things like that, symmetry, balance, those sorts of things. And that's so, when I split the 26 letters of the English alphabet and then put those on my hands, and we could kind of go into that, but basically I, took those 13 letters, put A on my thumb and Z on my other thumb, and then the other sections of phalanges in my fingers, you put the rest of the letters on. And all of this just seemed like whoever built the English alphabet, or however this was constructed, how it was given to us, we don't know, and I don't know if we can know that. But it seems like it was built off with a symbiotic relationship with nature, an understanding of nature very deeply, very intimately. And so whoever constructed this was using things within nature and that allowed that to kind of flow through them. And I think that this is exactly what gnosis is. It's a direct, divine, it's a mystical insight into nature itself, and then sort of letting the intelligence within nature flow out of you. And I think this is what these ancient people were doing when they constructed this. And they obviously constructed it with number in mind. There can be no doubt, I don't think. And I think that most other languages, in my opinion, are absolutely based on number. And so for us to try to understand languages, I think we need to step outside of the language and then look at the language numerically. And so that's kind of what the last 2 books are about. So. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm doing the same kind of research, and I'm fully on the same page here with you. And you also have very much remarkable results from your method. I've used your method also extensively together with the Pythagorean method because, that's the one I'm most familiar with. But mostly I do now is calculate both numbers for a word and see what it means. But my question now is the relationship with the Freemasonry, because you also see the G in their symbol, and the G is of course the number 7, and in the German language, God is G-O-T-T, there's a double T which is also 7. So can you tell, let me ask it differently. I'm quite certain that Freemasonry uses the same system as you do. Do you have any evidence for that, or what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, because this was gotten from the Holy Bible, and I have a Masonic edition, and so I also use the Freemasonic square and compasses to decode this as well. To me, what these secret societies, if you will, or these underground societies, I think that these societies sprang up because they were trying to be custodians of true information that is within things like the Holy Bible, and they were trying to keep this information intact while basically you have governments, people in positions of power, people that are trying to hijack this stuff and completely have, and used it as a control system. I see a lot of people talk about that the Holy Bible was just created as a control system. Like that's what its intent was. And I just completely and 110% disagree with that. I believe that there's an absolute spirituality behind things like the Holy Bible, and this is what the Freemasons were trying to pass on. And the reason that they had to be secret about it, and just like the Priory of Sion or any of these organizations, the Knights Templar maybe, they were trying to keep this information intact because it's real, scientific, astronomical, meteorological, physiological, anatomical, astrotheological information that actually connects you directly to Mother Nature herself, and these stories are obviously stories that are, it doesn't make any sense to me how somebody could pick up the Holy Bible and somehow get from this that it's a literal document. That's completely bonkers to me. And so these ancient, like the Freemasons that are around today, I believe we're trying to hold on to this information. And so it would keep intact. And guess what? I mean, if I'm correct, in this cipher, which, I hate, I don't want to be too big-headed or anything, but I absolutely believe I am, then I can say without a shadow of a doubt that it worked. That it worked, that they did hold on to this, and it can be, and then it, it has reemerged. And I think that this has happened many times in history, where this information, this body of information, this body of knowledge that connects you directly to Mother Nature was rediscovered, and there was a renaissance, and people recognized the true genius in things like the Quran and the Holy Bible and the Mahabharata, etc., etc.,
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the Freemasons, I think that that's, unfortunately, just like Christianity, just like most of the religions now have completely lost their way. And I feel the same with the Freemasons. Luckily, though, that they've had a deeper, I think they had a richer and deeper historical context to it. They kept the body of knowledge more intact than the other religions have, and so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think so too, Marty. I think it's about science. We call it then holy science. I write it a little bit differently because I start with a W and double L. But it's that science, and I fully agree that Freemasonry and many other occult societies have kept this science alive in secrecy. But that's okay. But I also think that some people use this knowledge for their own agenda. In order to, for instance, control people or to somehow, whatever they want to achieve with it. So that's the backside of this science. But that's also what we see with university science. You can use it for creating something beautiful and also create something very destructive. It's the same science.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess I've been asked the question about, like, okay, well, this is, I feel like it's absolutely sacred information, and I want to treat it as it's sacred, as it's holy, and that's my approach to this. And I've had people ask me about, like, okay, well, don't you think it's irresponsible for you to just give this information out? That shouldn't people have to, like, earn it or whatever? And I would just say this, that, just look at the strife of our world right now. I feel like we need something to come in. We need a new perspective to come in to help us bring some sensibility back to spirituality. And that's kind of my goal. And I also feel like, just like you said, I think that there's people out there right now, absolutely, that know this information, that are keeping it from the general public and are using it to their own means. And this is actually, people say, conspiracy theory or whatever, but Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, they're absolutely legitimate secret societies that absolutely know this and are using it against people. And so it's, in my opinion, we have to fight back. And the best way to fight back is to fight back with knowledge, because that's the most powerful thing in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, bring it in the open so that everybody can use it, and then the powers that try to control, they don't have less influence, because we can see the trick they are playing with words and with numbers and with symbols and things like that.
And if I may say too, no one owns this. This is no one's intellectual property. This is information that's from Gaia or Mother Earth or the cosmos or the universe or the grand architect or whatever. No one owns it. And so no one can say that, this is just for people in secret societies or, the elite or the privileged ones or whatever. I completely disagree with that. And I'll never agree with that. This is information that's for everyone. And I think that native tribes, things like that, when they had their initiation and ritual ceremonies and stuff like this was a body of knowledge, whether it be philosophical or how scientific they were. It was the body of knowledge that they were teaching to their entire tribe, so that the entire tribe would be enlightened. So this isn't just for somebody in some stupid secret society somewhere. This is, in my opinion, things that should be taught in classrooms. So.
Yes, I think so too. And that's why we are part of the School of the Holy Science and also part of Pateo Academia, because this knowledge needs to be educated, and people should learn about it. Maybe just an example to make it more concrete for people. When we look at the symbol from the Freemasonry, you have the square and the compass, and the angle of the compass is, as you explain in your videos, 47 degrees of arc. Can you explain a little bit about that and give your interpretation of that number 47?
Yeah, sure. This shows how one simple symbol of a compass can actually encode very, highly scientific information. It's, basically you have the concepts of heaven and earth in the Bible. It's the first line, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, in this cipher, heaven, is 651551. This equals 23. And then earth is 51576, and this equals 24. So the combination of heaven and earth, 23 plus 24 equals 47. Well, half of 47 is 23.5 degrees, and this is basically the axial tilt of the earth. So the earth on the plane is tilted 23.5 degrees, and it's actually, I think, 23.4, but very, very close. There's 47 degrees between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And so this exact degree is talking about basically, the sine wave that we know Santos talks about quite a bit, but that navigators and, cartographers and all this have used forever, and so all, the concepts of heaven and earth, the axial tilt of the earth, the degrees between Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer are in one single symbol. And so it really points you how powerful symbols can be. In the Freemason symbol, you have the compass is open to 47 degrees. Another thing about this 47 degrees, and that shows that actually that our ancestors are there as a group of people that are in power that know this. If you look at the back of the dollar bill, the pyramid on the dollar bill is at 47 degrees. So obviously not, a coincidence. We the people using this cipher, the preamble of the Constitution, the first three words, we the people equals 47. So, the compass equals 47 degrees, and the square, of course, is a right angle, so that equals 90 degrees. Well, 47 plus 90 is 137. 137.5 is the degree of phyllotaxis. And what phyllotaxis is this degree in which plants will arrange their leaves, and so it will receive like the optimal sun and rain and that sort of thing. And so it's this very specific degree that we see all throughout the botanical kingdom. And here, this one symbol of the Freemasonic square and compasses is 0.5 degrees off from that. So to me, it's not, that's what an ingenious way of encoding this, you know what I mean? And it really shows that I think that the Freemasons were trying to pass on the body of information that numbers is something of a cosmic origin. And this is, I think this is a very important thing to understand, that numbers aren't a construct of the human being. We didn't make numbers. Numbers created us, vice versa. Like I like to say, we didn't invent the wheel invented us. And I think this is the body of knowledge that's in that one symbol, So that's pretty powerful. So not only are you talking about a right angle, you're talking about the degree of phyllotaxis, you're talking about the axial tilt, you're talking about the gematria of our English alphabet, and that's all in one symbol. And now you can see why it's such a powerful symbol that has lasted for, how many years. So.
Yeah, exactly. And when we take a triangle, the sum of all angles are always 180. And when you deduct 74 from that, the rest is 133. So that means that both other angles are 66.5, which also is very meaningful, I think, when...
okay.
Yeah, but maybe you can say, because the number 33 is also very special. That's also in your name, the name of your YouTube channel. So maybe you like to comment on 133 maybe too, or 66 and a half.
Yeah, actually, I just thought about this that you said that. So yeah, you took 180 degrees of a triangle and you subtracted this key number 47, and this gives us the number 133. I didn't even think about this. Up, down, left, right, forward, and reverse. This is the 6 directions of space. If using this cipher, this equals 133. And so this idea of basically, and when you look at the 6 directions of space, this is also a reference to God doing his work in 6 days and then resting on the 7th. This is the 3-dimensional mathematics of you, forward, reverse, left, right, up, and down, and then you have the axis point, and that axis point becomes you. That's you. It's the human perspective. And so the motif in the Bible where he says, God did his work in 6 days and rest on the 7th, it's talking about the 3-dimensional mathematics of you living right now, and then you actually look at the word axis, and axis is just an anagram for a 6. And so you literally have the 6 dimensions of space, and then the A being the alpha, being the first thing, and that's you. And that's that, once again, that's 6 and resting on 7th. The revelation of St. John the Divine, this adds up to 133 as well. So there's, and I could go through a few more here, but that just shows you how, that even a number like 133, that's not going to mean anything to a theoretical physicist or even a mathematician, actually has an enormous meaning. And it can point to all of these different fundamentals in philosophical and scientific fundamentals of you living your life right now. And so it's very applicable, and it's very important information. So.
Exactly, but here again we see the combination of both hemispheres, and that makes Holy Science so interesting because, all outcomes have meaning, and there's not just one meaning. Mostly there are many meanings, and even when you combine those meanings, you get even more meanings. So it's like you open a door to a totally new way of looking at the world and how things are connected. And I think it gives me very much energy. I'm not sure how it is doing to you, but it's very inspiring.
Well, the thing that it does for me is it puts the human being perspective back into it. Modern science right now is trying to take the human being perspective out as if it doesn't mean anything. And what I think that these ancient religions were talking about, and these were people that were extremely intelligent, wise beyond their years, that were passing down information to us about the nature of reality. And what they were saying is that, things like as above, so below, that sort of thing, is that you cannot deny the human perspective, and that there's actually something very special about it. And, basically from what I get from reading a lot of this is the fact that is what they're basically saying is, look, you are a divine creation. And we're gonna show you this in all the ways we can. We're gonna make you work for it a little bit, we're gonna hide it into symbols and mathematics and that sort of thing, but it's there, and this is the perspective that I think we need to bring this back into science, What was I thinking of? Okay, yeah. I was watching this, it was called Big Think on YouTube, and it's Lawrence Krauss, and he's this theoretical physicist, I think from East Coast somewhere. And he was on this YouTube video, and he was saying that, the story that modern science is painting today is that the human being is actually rather insignificant, but that we shouldn't feel bad about this. And this to me is just absolutely absurd. When I heard this, I'm like, what? You know, where in your science does it say that the human being is insignificant? It's not like you went, you know, we got to figure it out, ladies and gentlemen. A squared plus B squared equals humans are insignificant. No, that's your interpretation, that's your perspective, and that's your belief system. And you're placing that belief system over your theories and your experiments, and then you're making this conclusion, and then going out and getting paid thousands of dollars to stand in front of an audience and say that this is what the modern science is saying. Well, I've looked at that, and I don't see that anywhere. You know, modern science is basically saying, you know, something that the human being is insignificant. Well, why are you saying that? Basically, they say it because of scale, right? Look how big the universe is. Look how big our solar system, look how big our galaxy is, look how small human beings are, therefore we're insignificant. Well, they're forgetting about relativity. It's relative. You know, if you're in the northern hemisphere and you look up, that's up to you. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's down, and vice versa. You know, it's completely relative, and guess what it's relative to? The human being. And so they're not even listening to their own philosophies and their own science when they make these conclusions, which I think are just absolutely absurd. And I think that they're actually doing an enormous disservice to humanity by making those claims. By looking at the literalist, fundamentalist religions and saying, look, religion's nonsense. Well, yeah, that is nonsense. You're absolutely right. But that doesn't mean that we should just wipe the slate clean of these ancient spiritualities and these ancient archaeological sites and, you know, and books and all of that. I mean, I think that there's a high wisdom there, and it's only our patriarchal lens, if you will, this reductionist lens that disallows us from actually seeing the true wisdom there.
Yes, I think we can even go a little bit further. We can just say our ignorance is blocking our understanding of what our ancestors built. For instance, Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid in Giza and much more. In Peru and in Mexico, because there is so much evidence of high understanding, of high knowledge, of holy science, and I think it's very shameful that we don't put much effort more in it to understand it and to grasp the meaning, because the clues our ancestors left us are very they're very many. And people who get really high salaries, like the professors you talk about at the universities, they make a lot of money, and all they do is they block our understanding. So I think it's much more than just a shame. I think it's nearly criminal to waste money and not do your work correct. So I couldn't agree with you more about your criticism on these kinds of scientists, because they don't do us any favor. They block the step we can now make as humankind to a higher understanding.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it there, because it really is ignorance. Because, you know, when you look at the root word of ignorance, it's ignore. You know, mm-hmm. And so for modern science to look at something like the precision and the accuracy and the just mind-boggling engineering feat that is something like the Great Pyramid of Giza, and then just say, well, you know, not much there, just a bunch of, you know, superstitious ancient people that were, you know, whatever. You know, you're basically ignoring the fact that they're proving to us right there that they had some knowledge that we don't have. It's proof. You know, 100%. So basically, what are you doing? You're being ignorant. You're ignoring that, you know. Speaking of, I'd heard Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was, I forget where I heard this, some interview or something, and he was basically saying that he doesn't see how anybody in the past could have more astrophysical knowledge, you know, understanding of astrophysics than we have now, because we have things like Hubble telescope and stuff. And, you know, my perspective on this is just like, well, we don't know the means in which they used to perform their sciences. You know, if as above, so below is absolutely correct, which I completely believe it is. I believe that our perspective has a lot to do with it, and the things that are out there are in here. Well, maybe they traveled interdimensionally or something. They traveled within themselves to see what was out there, and they understood that completely. Maybe so, maybe not. We don't know. But just the fact that, to look at something like the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is aligned to all the stars, it's encoding the great year, the Platonic year, it's encoding all of these, measurements and mathematics and everything like that, and then just to look at that and go, not much to see there, that I think you're totally right. It's borderline like, criminal or whatever, it's absurd. And that science, I think with, the stuff that's coming out right now with people that are, I'm a layman, I didn't graduate school. I didn't, I learned all this stuff on my own. And how is it that a guy like me can poke more holes in your argument than Swiss cheese, and then to sit, you know what I mean? And it's absurd, and it really it inspires me to keep working too. Because it shows that, hey man, our ancestors had a lot to give us, and the more and more we go into that and the more and more we bring out, the more and more we're going to refute that argument, their side. Even Socrates said the real secret of change is to focus not on destroying the old, but building the new. And that's what I want to do. I want to erect a new model that just makes their old model obsolete. And there's a number of great researchers like yourself, the people at the School of the Holy Science. There's a bunch of guys out there that right now that there's going to be a discovery that's just going to completely refute their entire position. And I think that's happening right now.
Exactly, Marty. And that's what I really like about your videos. For the listeners who've not seen one of them, please go to your YouTube channel, Marty Dietz 33. What you do there is you have a whiteboard and you just start with an empty whiteboard, and then you use a word and then you put the numbers there and you come up with the total and then you explain it. And it's you do it so nicely, so easy to follow, but on the other hand you tell so much information, so it's fascinating. Sometimes I have to pause it and bring it back a little bit and watch it again, because it's very a lot of information in just a short period of time. What you do really good, I think, Marty, is not to fight against the old way of thinking. Something that I am doing a little bit too much sometimes. I'm trying to prove the old system to be wrong, but you just show the new system, and I think that's a much more it's a more easy way, but it's also more nice to participate in, because fighting against something is not a nice energy. So I appreciate your approach very much, and it also helps me to stay focused on creating the new way of thinking, the new holy science, and forget about the old way of thinking, because it's obsolete, or it's becoming obsolete.
It is becoming obsolete, which isn't to say that all their science is wrong or anything.
No.
I mean, I don't want to make it, I'm not trying a sweeping claim. I know you're not either, but I mean, I definitely learned a lot from guys like Graham Hancock. His first couple books, they were, highly footnoted. I mean, he went and walked the walk and talked the talk. When he made a claim, he would back it up. And he had this, huge books like Underworld and Fingerprints of the God that were just, littered with references to what he was talking about. And the people that read the book that didn't want to believe in it, it didn't matter what evidence, it didn't matter what facts he threw at them, they just ignored it. And so, how much time are you going to spend? How much lean brain tissue are you going to burn trying to fight these people? And then look at what, he's done. His work is done, whether you agree with everything it says, that's not the point. The point is that he's stepped out and he's accelerated our intelligence and our learning and our understanding of the past, and helping understand the past is going to help us understand the future, And so I look at a guy like that who's, spent years trying to fight the system, and instead, I just learned from that. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to get into some argument with you. I'm not going to counterpoint you. I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing, and be scientific about it. I've made mistakes. There's mistakes in my books. There's mistakes in my videos, and there will be. Why? Because I'm being scientific about it. And I can make a mistake and then go and say, hey, that's wrong. Look, I made that mistake. It's right there. Everyone can see it. Let's fix it and let's move on. Because that's what it is to be scientific. And a lot of problem that you have, especially with, like a new age type of people or whatever, they make a lot of claims, a lot of sweeping, wild claims about things that they can't back up. And I didn't want to do that because I feel like I am a man of science. I've always appreciated science, but I also saw that science was lacking in so many different areas, and so that's what I want to focus on. So yeah.
Again, I can only fully agree here, Marty. Also, in my own work, I've corrected some essential mistakes I made in the past. But to me, that's only strength, because when you are open about it and you say, no, this is, I look at it differently now, and you can also give arguments why the previous vision was not fully correct, and you show the new vision with the arguments, then you are in fact, it's incremental science. Then you are building on something instead of saying this is true. Then it's a kind of belief system, and you stick to that old dogma, and that's what I think is great about our way of doing holy science. We are not afraid to make mistakes. And when we do, we are fully open about it. We just show them to everybody, this is what we did in the past, and now we see it differently. And our ego is not attached to it, and we don't try to hide it or somehow try to fool people. No, it is like it is, and we are here to learn. And we don't have all the answers at once. We just have a direction we go in, and we follow that direction. And sometimes we have to go a little bit more to the left or to the right, but in the end we'll get the answers. I'm quite certain about it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just a basic lesson in life that, making mistakes is what helps you grow. I've only been on this planet 34 years, and I've made a whole bunch of mistakes. And I'm glad I made them, because that just helped me to grow into, what I'm becoming now. And so, and that's a great philosophy. So why don't we just take that philosophy into science and, continue with that, once again, we're like bashing on modern science here, but, they're just, they feel like they're so correct in their position, and that they're absolutely right, and that they have all the answers, that sort of thing. And just for years, that was what I focused on. I read, Stephen Hawking and Carl Sagan, and I looked into that, very deeply, because I thought that was the rational thing to do. That was the responsible thing to do, was not look into stupid spiritualities and just focus on science, But then I realized that they have just as many biases as anything else. It doesn't matter what you're looking at, spiritualities, colleges, belief systems, they have just as many biases, and those biases need to be pointed out and realized that that's not science, that's a belief system, so that's my position anyway.
Yeah, that's my position too. I even maybe go a little bit further. I don't call it science, I call it science fiction, because both guys you mentioned there, they come up with all kinds of crazy concepts, which doesn't have any ground at all. It's just an idea, but there is no backing at all for the things they bring up. So I'm not really a fan of these guys. Neither am I a fan of Albert Einstein, because to me it's not really science. It's not helping us at all. And I think we should go back to the ancient Greek people like Pythagoras and Plato and Heraclitus. Those are my heroes, and I think we can learn much more about what they knew 2,000 years ago than what modern science is trying to explain to us.
Yeah, and modern science, I don't think I have as much of a problem with Einstein as some people have. Not that I, follow his science or anything like that. But I will say this, that I read a book, Ideas and Opinions by Albert Einstein, and he was a gentle, kind, philosophical, God-loving man. There was, and people paint this picture of him that he's like some master scientist, that he was just in a corner, with wacky hair writing crazy equations or anything like that. And, he absolutely believed in God. Now, was he wrong or right about his science? Well, who knows right now, right? I mean, I kind of tend with you. I'm more on the Russellian science than I am on the Einsteinian science. But, but at the same time, he was doing science. Okay, did he do some things? Are we going to find out that they're wrong? Okay, cool. Well, at least we established that, I mean, I take the same position with guys like David Icke, interdimensional reptilians running the world. I'm going to have to part ways with you on that. But at the same time, I'm glad there's a guy out there that's looking into interdimensional reptilians running the world, because if maybe that's true, and if nobody was in there looking at it, then how are we going to understand if it's true or not? You know what I mean? Personally, I think it's nonsense, but at the same time, I'm glad there's somebody out there that's willing to step out and go that direction, because, hey, This is a crazy world, man. I mean, who knows where the answers are going to come? Who knows what's actually real, you know? And so hopefully I'm making a little bit of sense there, you know? I try not to chastise anybody that, you know, I've seen a lot of arguments. Let me say this. I've seen a lot of arguments right now between guys like that are looking into like Walter Russell science and then like Marco Rodin and people that are working with free energy. And my position is just work together. You know, none of you have the answer. Let's just face it. None of you have the answer. But I bet you if you work together, you might come up with something remarkable. And if you just set your egos aside, set everything aside and say, let's find this free energy, whatever it's going to take, whatever avenue we have to go down, whatever science we have to look into, whatever we have to do, and let's find it. Because it is, you know, and who cares about who discovers it, you know?
Yes. Thank you for saying this. I'm also working on that subject of free energy, and that's my point for many years now. But you see that ego is still blocking that. So one day we'll overcome that. Some comment I can make on Albert Einstein is I just read an article about him that he was a less than average student, and none of his professors thought great about him. And I think there was also a woman in his life who was the most inspiration to him. So he was more like a puppet. He was pushed forward by people who want to have this kind of science on the universities, and that's why he was promoted so badly. But it's so strongly. But it's not. It didn't bring us much apart from the atomic bomb and other crazy ideas. So I think we should go to the ideas of Walter Russell and Victor Schauberger and many other people who had understanding of nature, because that's what's lacking in physics at this moment. It's more mathematics than it is understanding nature. There's nothing wrong with mathematics. I think it's the language of the gods, but we need to link it to nature in order to make it to have it some real sense, to understand it fully.
Yeah, and I think the real science, you know, that's going to explain the universe the best is going to be a science that basically anybody can understand. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because it has to be universal. And yes. Just like, you know, looking at, you know, using these philosophical concepts on the English alphabet itself, you know, it seemed like the more and more I align myself with nature as far as like economy, simplicity, duality, symmetry, you know, those sorts of things, those things work. That's because that's how nature works. You know what I mean? And those are things that anybody, I feel like, can understand. Anybody can go out in their yard and look at a leaf and see, oh, okay, this has symmetry, it's got duality, you know, there's a central point there, all of these concepts. And I think and anybody can understand that. And so I think the more and more modern science steers away from that, the less and less we're actually going to understand, you know. And now, you know, they're making claims about something that happened, you know, the 13.75 billion years ago, yet something like Göbekli Tepe shows up, where there's an entire city that's buried under sand that puts humanity back another 5,000 years or whatever. You know, they have nothing to say on that. So you're going to tell me what happened 13.75 billion years ago, but you can't tell me what happened 10,000 years ago. I'm sorry, but I think you might need to get off your high horse a bit. You know, I mean, that's kind of crazy to me, you know, so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much ground to be uncovered, and there's so much lacking of understanding of the origin of humankind and our true history. So I think we should focus on that. There are pyramids for the coast of Cuba underwater, and for the coast of Japan too. So I think we should dig into that more. And
what's the Cuba? I haven't heard about this.
Oh, they found also large pyramids underwater. In the ocean, and they're very, very big construction. So I'm quite certain the pyramids were not built underwater. So they must have been very old. The problem with the pyramids is you can't exactly tell when they were built, but you can tell them when they started to be underwater, and they were there at least 10,000 years underwater. So
really, I haven't heard about that. That's interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, but there's much more. But the problem is the mainstream science is ignoring all these very important facts, and they are therefore blocking our understanding of what really happened on this planet. So I think it's time that they indeed get off from that high ivory tower and be more open about everything. what I use in my own work is if you can't explain it to a child, then you not really understand it. And most most academic theories are not explainable to somebody from first grade, so to say. So it's not really understanding. It's just an idea. It's a very complex idea, but it's not understanding. And I think we need science that helps us to understand. And most of the theories are not really explanations at all. They're just descriptions, and that's a big difference. You can describe things with very complicated formula, but it doesn't mean you understand it, because only when you can explain it, then you understand it. And that's also a very big handicap for the academic theories at the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing about being able to explain it to a child, I think it's just dead on, you know?
Yeah,
I think, especially since sometimes I think children get more than adults do. So.
I think so too, yeah. But with them, the brains are more in balance. When you only have the left brain, then you can dig into very complicated theories and think that is true. But when both brains are active, both hemispheres are very active, then you immediately know it's not the whole story, it's not the full picture. So then you just ignore it. You say no, it can't be true, and that's something we need to develop. We need to bring back our brain into in real balance in order to get to a deeper understanding, a higher understanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring this up. Like, I don't know if you know who Randall Carlson is. He's kind of a metrologist. He's a master builder. He's a 32nd degree Freemason. But basically what he does is go around and he teaches classes on sacred geometry, the Great Year, and he also does his geological work is just superb, just showing that there was absolutely a flood. You know, at parts it was like 2,000 feet deep and 7 miles wide, moving at 60 miles an hour, and he's showing this in the landscape, you know. And this is a guy that has been doing this for 30 years or something, teaching classes on this long time. And yet he's considered a renegade scholar, you know. And I'm like, well, you don't need that adjective renegade. That's what a scholar is. Here's a guy that can go out and teach this quote unquote complex geology and sacred geometry and metrology and things like this, and can explain it very well. You know, and explain it to anybody, and they can get it. And to me, that's a true scholar. You know, and if you have a scholar that goes around and tries to explain stuff, but it's like, well, it's too complicated for you to understand, I don't really think you're being scholarly. You know, I think, just like you said, I think you're being pseudoscientific.
Exactly. It's pseudoscience, and that's, yeah. And I think also if you are really a scholar, then you don't stick to one discipline. You try to understand everything and
absolutely
the interconnections. And that's also the problem with most university professors. They are sort of obliged to only talk about their own little square subject, a mile, so to say, or whatever. It's a square inch they can talk about. But there's a much bigger landscape, and I think especially when you are, let me put it differently, almost all major discoveries were done from somebody from a different field of expertise. So they looked at another subject field from their own background, and they saw suddenly all kinds of different patterns, which somebody who was only in that field was not able to see. So we need to have interdisciplinary experts or scholars who are willing to investigate all kinds of subjects, not just only their own field, but be very broad oriented.
Yeah, and we going back to this thing about putting the human perspective back into it, we also need the heroes, the warriors, the storytellers, the mythologists, people that make rituals, you know what I mean? We need warriors of the mind, body, and spirit and heart, you know, along with this, you know. If you have a bunch of morally ambiguous scientists going together just using that left brain, well then of course you're going to get an atom bomb. You know what I mean? You know, we need that balance. We need people that are into science and that are just as much into poetry and romanticism as they are into astrophysics, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because that getting back to that wholeness, because that makes you a whole person, you know. I think later, you know, the last 5 years of my life, I've been a songwriter for a long time, and I was always trying to figure out how the hell does this work? How is it that I can sit down sometimes and in 15 minutes have a really good song and have absolutely no idea where this came from? And it was only by being analytical with my left brain onto my right brain to try to figure this out that actually led me to what I believe is a higher order of that spirituality within nature. It was only understanding the fact that, okay, maybe this song, this idea didn't come from me. It came from the ether, the invisible landscape, the astral plane, the creative force within nature, whatever you'd like to say. And it was only by getting off my left brain and trying to merge the two that it actually brought me to this idea that now I'm, without a doubt, I believe in a higher power. Absolutely. Joseph Campbell has a great quote where he says, I don't need faith. I have experience. That's what we want. We don't want to have faith. We don't want to have beliefs. We want experience with this stuff, that's what I like to focus on now. We need people right now that are willing to fight for the good cause, I think, if you will. You know what I mean? And that cause is ale theology. It's the study of truth. What's the truth? That's what we need to go for. That's what, all eyes on that, maybe it's just a lighthouse on the horizon, but we need people to point to it and say, that's where we need to go. You know what I mean? That's just how I feel now, kind of growing up and trying to figure this whole thing out. That to me is more, mythologies and rituals are just as important as chemistry, in my opinion,
Yeah, maybe there are a kind of chemistry, a kind of alchemy, a kind of understanding how the field, so to say, how it works and how you can use it. To me, the right hemisphere is more like a receiver, and the left hemisphere is more like a broadcaster. And when you focus on the right hemisphere, then you're able to get that information from the field. But when you think, oh, it's me who created it, then you are somehow deceiving yourself. You're just in touch with a bigger unity, and then creativity is something that is very, very, very powerful and very miraculously. So what you describe with your songs, I can fully dig into that, because that's also, I think, how it works when I'm having my more creative periods. It's not when I'm trying to be analytical, but I'm just open, and then suddenly all kinds of ideas come. I have no clue where they come from, but they are really, really meaningful to me, and it gives me a lot of energy.
Yeah, and this was an extremely humbling thing for me to realize too, that, if I write a good song, to say, well, maybe I didn't write that. Maybe that came from something else, because how easy would it be for me to be like, oh, I wrote a good song. There's a bunch of people that like it. Look how awesome I am. Look what I did. Look what I did. But, when I'm being honest with myself, then I have to say, well, I don't really know if I did. Did it come through me? Yeah, sure it did. Am I expressing it in my own unique way? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, I have to say that, if I wake up in the morning, I had this experience where I woke up in the morning one time, didn't even go to make coffee like I usually do. I just went to my guitar, put my capo on the 5th fret for no reason, didn't think about it at all. And the next 10 minutes, I had this great song that I love even till today. And I remember after I did that, I'm like, how in the world did that happen? Did I even write that? Or was I just open enough to receive it, And this actually led me to this idea that, artists are merely secretaries for angelic revelation. Of course, there's some metaphor there, but some not either. You know what I mean? I think that we're just dictating things that are coming from, that source, that whatever it is, deity, divine, the consciousness behind everything, whatever it is, Yeah,
I think so too, and that's why a lot of artists use stimuli, use drugs and all kinds of things to reach that. But I think you don't need that kind of substances. You can also use many other ways to get into contact with the field. But yeah, it's very when you need to write a song and you need inspiration and you try to force it, and then of course you try to.
It never works.
It's impossible. So then it becomes really frustrating, and then maybe drugs is interesting for them to use. But I don't think you should force it. You should just be open and be grateful for what you can receive in that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, as far as like chemicals and things like that, I think you can abuse anything. You know, I mean, there was times in my life where I was addicted to working out, where I was abusing my body because I was working out so much. You know, and it was, you know, you'd think because you're working out, oh, you're doing really good things, but no, you can abuse anything: television, food, drugs, you know, the internet, anything. You know, so and that's a good point, because there's a lot of modern scientists, going back to this, that look at things like the psychedelics, or the plant hallucinogens, or these plant allies that we see in the botanical kingdom that are there for our use to help us when we need that, and they poo-poo that. They say, oh, don't concentrate on that. There's nothing to see there, even though they may have never been in that dimension or ever experienced that. And that's just, once again, that's ignorance. You're ignoring something. You know nothing about it, and you're ignoring it, and then making this huge claim against it. And I think this is just absurd, once again.
Yeah. Yes, great. So we're nearly at the end, Marty, and time flies when you're having fun. So
right.
Really fast. To look into the future, what you're writing, volume 2 has now been completed. I've not received it yet, so maybe it will come soon. So I had no chance to read it. But you're also working on volume 3 now. Was that what you said in the?
I've started that. I'm working on volume 3. I've got it probably won't be out for a little bit, but maybe like a year or something like that, because I'm really trying to make this one a little bit more in depth than the other ones. But yeah, I'm working on that, and I'm also contemplating doing a short book on just like quotes and poetry and stuff like that. I've got the ongoing web series that you can get at martleeds33.com. You can check that out. And then I also have a gematria calculator that you can get at Google Play. It's only $2.99, and it's got the cipher on there. It's got a PDF explaining the cipher, and then it's got a breakdown of the holy name of Jesus Christ on there as well that you can check out. $2.99 at Google Play. It's just pi in English gematria. You can look it up. And so that's a really handy tool to have. And other than that, just webinars. I'm working on my first full-length record as well, and that should be out hopefully this year. And then I guess the only other thing is I'll be speaking at the Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's 25th, 26th, 27th of this month. So, look forward to that. If you can make it, go. It should be really great. Like, Randall Carlson's going to be there, a guy we spoke about before, Larkin Rose, Mark Pateo, some good speakers. So that should be pretty fun. So.
Whoa, you're really busy. Great.
Yeah, sometimes too busy.
Yeah, I can understand that. And your activities for the School of the Holy Science, I've been very busy lately myself, so I didn't get a chance to check everything. But when is your next seminar coming up, or is it...
I was actually supposed to do one last weekend, and then that fell through, and before I didn't do one for like a month and a half or 2 months because I was working on the book, and so I got that out. So everything's just calming down now, so I'm trying to get that going. And then, of course, the radio show, too, and that should be, I think I'm starting it this month. astrotheologyradio.com, check that out. So, and once again, you'll be on there. Santos is going to be on there. A bunch of great guests. Scott Onstadt, Randy Powell, who's at Pateo Academy. So look forward to that. So.
Yeah, great. Wow, yeah, very interesting. One final question, Marty, because when I look at your videos, it all seems so very easy, like everything is coming to you. But I have the impression that you have to do a lot of research to make one video, because all the numbers and all the words that you put in there, they make so much sense, and you cannot do that in one day. So. Can you explain a little bit how much research you do before you can make one video? And how do you get inspiration?
The best analogy I can make is basically a musical analogy. When you're like jazz fusion or just kind of jamming, free flowing and letting ideas come, you just kind of get into a space where you just completely open, and you let the ideas flow. And so before, years before, I would just do that with music, and then music would come. But now I'm doing that with all sorts of things, with the math and these, the philosophical ideas and the symbols and things like that. And so I just try to get into a space where I just kind of let those ideas come and grab them when they do, and I'm grateful for them. So, I mean, I'm just always doing research, like all day long. I'm always thinking about something or reading something or looking something up on the internet. So it's a constant pursuit. And it's, I've had a ball doing it. I've had just a great time doing it. So it's just been a wonderful experience. So, and I'm glad. I'm just extremely happy that I can share it with other people and that they're getting it. So.
And you must have a really big pile of papers where you have all kinds of words and numbers behind it, and all the material. Yeah, you can use it. Okay, great. It was really a pleasure, Marty, to talk to you again, and I'm so happy that I work with you and other people like Santos, because I think we are a small group now, but we are breaking free to a totally new, different way of understanding reality. And maybe in the future people will talk about us in history classes, say, yeah, those few guys were doing this and helped us to understand the bigger picture. So it's an honor for me to work with you.
Hey, and if they don't talk about us, we're having a good time. So
we already have a good time. That's
right. That's all that matters. So
you're right. Thanks for saying that. Okay. Thank you for being my guest, Marty. All the listeners, thank you very much for tuning into Pateo Radio. Whether it was live or you listened to the broadcast in the archive. My next radio show will be in Dutch again. So maybe you can also tune in to another in English. So again, thank you all, and hope to meet you in the air another day.
Thanks, Johan.
Thank you.
Dit is Ergens Over Radio.